We all get a new computer or a new phone at some stage, and when we do, it can be tempting to just migrate everything from our old device to the new one. Click Restore from Backup and you skip the hassle of a fresh setup and instead restore all your apps, settings and accounts in mere minutes. But actually, doing this isn't great for your privacy because you're carrying a huge amount of unnecessary digital exhaust with you. In this video, I'll explain the benefits of starting fresh instead of migrating your old setup and share some essential tips for setting up a new device. My goal is to help you enjoy a less cluttered, more private and more intentional digital life. Let's start by exploring why a clean slate can be so valuable, beginning with the issue of app bloat. When you choose to restore from a backup, every single app, along with all its data, gets transferred to your shiny new device. Some of this bloatware is outdated. It might no longer be relevant for your life, or perhaps it's a duplicate of a service you already use elsewhere. Or maybe you subscribed to a specialized app for a one-time project 2 years ago and never used it again. Or perhaps you installed a social media platform just to try it out, but have long since forgotten about it.
Do you even know what half these apps on me do? Like this one?
Sure, it's a leaf measuring app in case I ever visit a rainforest. Hey, it could happen. But all of these apps are ingesting data, sensor data, location data, Wi-Fi data, and sending it off to countless entities. You don't need this unnecessary data collection in your life. Starting fresh ensures that only the apps that add real value to your life make the cut and helps you significantly reduce how much personal information you give away. Next, these unnecessary apps all increase your attack surface. Some older apps may have known exploits that were never patched, or they might no longer be supported at all. Unfortunately, every piece of software has vulnerabilities, and the more apps you install, the higher your security risk. Rather than automatically transferring everything, use this opportunity to deliberately decide which apps are truly worth the added exposure. It's also an opportunity to revisit app permissions. You probably don't even remember which permissions you've granted all the apps on your device, like contact access or location. How many of you apps have permission to use my camera whenever you want?
Hi.
Oh, that's a lot of apps.
You might want to do a clean out and make sure that you only have apps on your phone that you really need. Otherwise, you're giving a lot of people and companies access to all kinds of location data, phone permissions, and general online activity.
Many of the dormant apps on your old device and their long forgotten permissions are a liability that you don't need to haul around with you. Next, setting up your device from scratch allows you to cut ties with existing profiles and accounts, like your old Apple ID or Google Play Store account. This might seem more like a hassle than a benefit. Let's look at the pros and cons. Attached to these old IDs are all the apps that you purchased through those accounts, and maybe you don't want to purchase them all again. On the other hand, these old IDs become bloated with years of connected services, and there's a tremendous amount of data attached to them that is used to profile and target you. In deciding whether cutting ties with your old App Store ID is right for you, I recommend asking yourself these questions. Are there purchased apps that I don't actually need anymore? And can I resubscribe to some of these apps under a new ID and cancel old subscriptions? You can make the decision about whether to set up a new ID or App Store account based on how many apps you actually need to transfer over. Cutting ties with old accounts can also help disrupt ID tracking. Both iOS and Android generate unique advertising identifiers that can be tracked across apps and services. But when you get a new device, you also get a new advertising ID. That's a great opportunity for a blank slate. Setting up fresh makes it more difficult for ad networks to stitch together a continuous profile of your habits across devices, especially if you're also using a new account. Resetting devices from scratch can also help clear out ghost data, things like old settings, hidden configuration files, and leftover profiles. When you restore from a backup, you might inadvertently bring along questionable privacy defaults from those accounts that you might not have looked at in a long time. Setting up your device from scratch allows you to revisit your privacy settings. Also, some older devices devices or app configurations simply don't age well. Security standards evolve rapidly, and the defaults on a 5-year-old phone are likely less privacy-friendly than those on a current model. Starting fresh means you're automatically adopting the newest, most secure baseline configurations. On top of that, even if an app was uninstalled long ago, traces can linger in backups as tiny configuration files, preference lists, or residual data that never fully disappeared. These remnants can contain login tokens or personally identifiable metadata. Starting from scratch guarantees that you leave those remnants behind. Importantly, I want to cover 2 more, less obvious reasons why restoring from backup isn't always the best choice. The first is because we want to live intentionally and avoid bad habit traps. Sometimes we keep using certain apps or services just because they're there, not because they truly serve our needs. We don't have to slip back into using an app just because it auto-restored. We can let old habits die with old devices. Think of it like a mini reset for your daily routines, giving you a chance to consciously pick new habits or decide that actually you don't need that app at all. This also encourages discovery. Perhaps there's an app you've been meaning to try, a new email provider or video watching app that better protects your privacy. But because your go-to apps were right there at your fingertips, you never felt the push to break out of your routine. A fresh setup is a great opportunity to explore new tools. This intentional reset also allows you to reclaim mental bandwidth. There are many studies that talk about how physical clutter affects our mood and productivity, but digital clutter has a similar psychological toll. Each rarely used app or leftover subscription can serve as a small mental weight that you carry every time you see it. Being selective about which apps and services to reinstall actively prunes your digital life. There was a time when we were careful about which letters to keep and which moments were important enough to photograph and preserve. We've become digital hoarders, indiscriminately collecting everything, presuming that more is better, and not realizing that we're just creating digital baggage that we have to mentally haul around and manage. Being intentional about what we want to save from our old devices instead of saving everything by default helps us focus on what truly matters. Finally, here are 7 quick tips for setting up your device from scratch and how to make the most of your blank slate. First, make a list of just your essential apps when you first start, and keep this list as small as possible. Just start with those things that you must have on your device and leave the rest off. Add apps only as you find them necessary. Second, wherever possible, instead of downloading the native app, use a browser. Social media apps in particular tend to be super invasive. A privacy-focused browser can act like a sandbox, giving you more control and requiring fewer permissions than a native app might demand. Whenever possible, use social media through your browser instead of installing the dedicated app. This simple switch can substantially strengthen your privacy. Third, have a think about which apps you truly need to carry around with you wherever you go, and which ones can stay on a secondary device at home or be accessed via a computer. Do you really need your banking app everywhere you go? Or can those transactions wait until you're back at your desk? Not every piece of software has to tag along for every moment of your day. Fourth, try out some privacy-focused alternatives as you add apps back to your device. Better podcast apps, video watching apps. You can even take this opportunity to try to consolidate your contacts on more private messaging platforms. See who might be willing to shift your conversation to an end-to-end encrypted messenger instead of using SMS or other non-private platforms. Fifth, set up new App Store accounts instead of logging into old ones if you can. Creating a new ID lets you cut ties with old exhaust. As mentioned, there is a financial consideration here, so this might not be the best option for everyone. But if cutting ties with your old App Store accounts and IDs makes sense for you, it can help your privacy. Sixth, pay close attention to the permissions each app requests and decline or limit those permissions wherever possible. And seventh, be intentional about what you need to back up from the old device and transfer to the new one. When I change devices, one thing I export is my contacts as a VCF file, which I import to to the new device. I recommend using a privacy-preserving contact app on your new device so that you're not giving all your contacts to Apple and Google, or you can use a Graphene OS phone, which is by default a private way to store your contacts. I also restore my Signal app from its built-in backup to keep my chat history intact. While I personally have most conversations set to auto-delete anyway, Signal's built-in backup feature is a great option for anyone who wants to retain their message records. I don't transfer photos. I have those auto-sync to Proton Drive and I back them up locally instead. And I also don't transfer notes or voice memos. I just save them elsewhere, archiving them on my local NAS. When people ask me questions like how to restore from a backup, my answer is usually don't. Yes, there are costs to starting fresh. For example, it can take more time, but there are also costs to restoring from a backup. You migrate old habits, bad privacy settings, security risks, and continue adding to the massive data profile that's grown from your past online activities. I personally love setting up new devices. It feels like moving into a new home where you get to pick the paint colors, choose the furniture, and arrange everything exactly the way you want. It can be surprisingly empowering, making you more discerning about which apps you install, the permissions you grant, and the personal data you share. By investing a bit of extra effort up front, you'll enjoy a cleaner, more private, and ultimately more efficient digital environment, one that you truly control. NBTV is a project of the Ludlow Institute, a non-profit research and media institute that educates people about how to reclaim ownership of their digital lives. Help us shift culture around privacy. Visit ludlowinstitute.org/donate to support our mission. And also check out our merch shop for cool clothes. These purchases also support our mission. And seventh, be intentionable. Be intentionable. And seventh, be intentionable. Let's make it a word. Be intentionable. The end. Cut.